This is an early music performance by John Eliot Gardner. The early music people started with medieval Renaissance music, and they've been moving up in the world. We heard a Bach Brandenburg Concerto No. 1 that was certainly touched by the early music people, and now here we have with John Eliot Gardner the early music people moving up into the classical era and even into the early romantic. There's a wonderful Berlioz Symphony Fantastique along these lines. The recordings feature brisker tempos and performances, and also period-accurate instruments, including that crazy contrabassoon that you're seeing, and period-accurate brass, etc., etc. Of course, those strings, mostly the great string players are playing instruments that date back to those times anyway. Oh man, if Beethoven was not the kookiest, craziest composer of his day, I don't know who was. So this is the Ninth Symphony. He's totally deaf. That opening chord, B flat against an F and an A. We're in D flat minor, so it's lay so with a third rather than the root underneath. And then this thing that's sort of like a recitative. He says quasi-recitative. And then it starts all over again with another big dissonant big bang. And then the recitative thing. We're talking about the cellos and basses. They don't do recitatives. They're, well, in figure bass, I guess, basso continuo. But we're in the classical period. What's he doing? And unlike the Bach Brandenburg Concerto No. 1, we certainly can't do the whole piece. It's way too long. Even the last movement is too long, so we'll do the best we can. But because of the way Beethoven sets up this last movement, we get to hear little snippets of the first three movements. The opening is a sonata allegro that's fairly abstruse, abstract, kind of anticipating Berlioz's along the same lines. Then that is rejected by the recitative, cellos and basses, and we get a little hint of the second movement, which was used years ago on the Huntley-Brinkley report. It's the scherzo movement. It's early rather than third movement. It's the second because the first movement, sonata allegro, was so languorous, shall we say. And then that's rejected as well, and we go off to the third movement very briefly. And if Bach doesn't give us changes of dynamics and certainly only changes of time signature within movements, Beethoven just keeps changing everything and rejecting everything until finally the basses bring us to a new melody. And then this new melody, it's rather folkish. Mi, mi, fa, fa, mi, re, do, do, re, mi, re. Mi, mi, fa, fa, mi, re, do, do, re, mi, do. Childishly simple. It's a 5-finger exercise. I'll teach that to you on piano. Well, maybe not in D major, but in C major. First day of a piano class. And that was intentionally so. That kind of hip to be square. Simplicity was all the rage. And this being a setting of Friedrich Schiller's Ode to Joy, and we've had a chorus sitting around for quite some time, and this chorus will finally address this theme. But first we're going to have this as a sonata, as a theme and variations. 16-bar main melody, and it's mi, fa, fa, mi, re, do, re, mi, re. Antecedent phrase, consequent phrase, mi, fa, fa, mi, re, do, re, do. So far 8 bars, and the contrast of re, mi, fa, mi, do, re, do, re, so, mi. 4 bars there, and that's kind of the contrast. And then the second phrase comes back as the fourth phrase, and that third and fourth phrase, which we could say A slash B, and then A slash returning, and that B and A slash returning returns a second time. So we've got basically the A section, and then the B section being little b, return of A, that section returns. So, and that's the structure of all of the variations, which is pretty typical. We heard that also in the Symphony No. 4, Surprise, second movement of Joseph Haydn, Franz Joseph Haydn. We're talking D major, 2 sharps, Mi, Mi, Fa, Sol, Sol, Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti, Do. And we've had now from that unison statement, basses and cellos, a little more complex. We've reached up into viola, now first and second line, and bassoon obligato, different line above. If Bach gave a little bit of independence to the bassoon, we're getting a lot more now, there's no question about it. Full statement by the orchestra. This orchestra is pretty big. We've got flutes, oboes, clarinets, bassoons, horns, trumpets, trombones are even going to be in here. You know, he put in the trombones finally in his 5th symphony last movement, so we're going with it. And we've got just timpani so far, but we're going to get into some other percussion as well, the battery, and then of course the full strings. And he's got double, triple, quadruple stops on the strings, ripping across the line. Notice that the trumpets are very heraldic, and again, they're kind of connected to what's happening with the timpani. Little break section, but then whap! It all happens again. That bloody dissonant chord of those feverish 8 notes, and now, glorious bass solo. Oh, let's not have these mournful tones, let's have something more joyful, and this is Schiller's Ode to Joy. Of course, Beethoven's totally deaf by this point. He was the assistant conductor of the piece, flailing around. Well, there was a real conductor, an assistant conductor. Well, Beethoven was billed as the main conductor, but the assistant conductor was really the main guy. So this is that opening cello bass recitative now with words. Oh, and here comes our male choir in. Oboe, clarinet, obligati over top, contrast. So we're into the theme and variations. This is the second statement of the theme and variations. Repeat of little B, and now with the altos, tenors, and basses coming in as well. Still don't have the sopranos. I gotta wait even more. And now more bells and whistles. A quartet, solo, soprano, alto, tenor, bass. There comes that soprano in there. Who does Beethoven think he is? An opera composer? Well, he did one opera. Full chorus back in. Tenor bass soloists. Here comes the alto. Soprano not far behind. It's what you might call second species counterpoint. They're doing 2 notes, 8 notes, against the main melody. They're doing 1 note at a time. Extended chords, and we're going somewhere else. We've seen that in the classical era there was a kind of a fetish fad of Turkish music. It's that Orientalism. And of course, at one point, the Turks got all the way to the gates of Vienna. So here's our Turkish music. This time it's percussion, triangle, cymbal, snare drum, which would have been associated with Turkish Janissary music, the marching band music, and then lots of woodwind and brass, including that hunky contrabassoon. We're in B-flat major by this point for a tenor solo. Ah yes, there's piccolo in the mix. That's another one of those Janissary touches. There's that cymbal, and we've had really almost a cross-cultural thing going, and now we have a cross-time sort of thing. Voila, the fugue. This would extend back to maybe the model of Handelian fugues. Beethoven was much more familiar with Handel's music than he would have been familiar with Bach's at this point. So he's really just showing all his chops, that he can do a fugue as good as the old guys, and so this brotherhood and sisterhood of humanity is not only Western Europeans, it's also the East folks, the Middle Easterners, and now it resonates across time and space. Just in case you forgot the main melody, which is equally good in minor, equality of major and minor. And now show your chops. Is 33 counterpoint? Well, it's between second and third because we're going to put 3 notes against 1 with a full chorus coming in. Wow, This is really terrible, but the piece is too long, so we're cutting to the chase the last 2 minutes or so. I mean, truth to tell, he likes to riff. Goes on and on. Tennessee Williams, a 20th century writer, is like this. I can testify to that myself. Right, here he goes. The grand finale. Back in cut time. We had been in 6/8 a while back there. And we're back in D major, of course, too. Got to be at the end. To win 3. And the tempo is changed, and he's going to change again. He's going to go back to prestissimo in cut time. Here we go. thunderous applause, but Beethoven was still flailing around conducting. He didn't know it was over, and he couldn't hear, of course. He didn't even have the sense to turn around, so the legend has it that the assistant conductor, with tears in his eyes, turned Beethoven around to face the applauding crowd, and of course he could only hear the silence of hands clapping, maybe like this. Can I do it? That's a little much, isn't it? Well, he doesn't know it yet, although maybe he suspects it. 3 years from this, no more Beethoven. This is 1824 and 1827. Bye-bye. And on his deathbed, people kept pulling off locks of his hair until there was hardly anything left. It was actually after he died, not before. And why did Beethoven die? Well, no autopsies, or very few autopsies back then. We don't know why Mozart died either. The speculation with Beethoven was perhaps syphilis. He had really even acquired that from his mother, upon birth. But research on those strands of hair that survive from Beethoven, there are some strands of hair that actually are at, this is not Beethoven's hair, are at San Jose State University. There's a Beethoven Center, and a gentleman named Brilliant who has been involved in this, and taking some of the analyses of the hair seems to suggest it may have been lead poisoning. Those plumbing fixtures in Vienna, or maybe the pots and pans, not so good.